Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. How is everybody? So this is Real Talks, and my name is David Steele. As promised, I was going to do a spoiler cast of the film that just got released this weekend, and that was Fast 10. And I have, as you can see there, Matthew is back with me. And so he went to see this yesterday. As did I, and I went to go see this. So, and you know, so I popped into a space the other day and real quick, and it said spoilers on it, and I knew exactly what we were going to get. I mean, this wasn't going to be any Academy Award winning thing. This, and this, and I heard some of the stuff, and I just went, God. So when I went to go see it, literally it was like a private showing. There were like 4 people in there. I went to go see it, an afternoon showing. But nonetheless, like I had to turn my brain off. Literally just click, turn my brain off. And even before the show began. And so I did a whole story about this. It'll be up today about trailers and how many trailers people actually sit down and they'll watch and how many they would like and obviously people would say none because they're marketing tools, but this is the kind of thing where they have to have some of it. And I remember the first trailer that came out for this was over 4 minutes long. And I said, why? Why do we need a 4-minute trailer? And I look back on that now and I go, that was the whole movie.
Yeah.
That was like nearly the whole movie. Anyways, so I turned my brain off and I just went, okay, just have fun with it.
So what you did is you did the dumb thing by turning your brain off. And I did the smart thing as a Fast and Furious fan. That's right. I've seen all the Fast and Furious films. This guy hasn't. He stopped at 5. You should have watched all of them all the way up to this point because honestly, they get even funner. Like you stopped where it started to get better.
Well, from what I understand, 9 goes into space, and I said, okay.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, it is. Wow.
Yeah. So okay. So we're here to talk about Fast 10, guys. And by the way, this is going to be a spoiler cast. So I didn't put it in there, and I probably should. I'll do it in a minute. This is going to have spoilers in it. So if you haven't seen Fast 10 and you want to see Fast 10, get out of this, go watch the movie, which, by the way, is 2.5 hours long, and then come back and watch this and watch our thoughts. So definitely. So first and foremost, how roughly, and I always ask these questions because it's interesting, what time did you go? And roughly how many people were in your theater?
I don't think we even talked about this, did we, in terms of like what was my theater experience like off air. But I went to a 12 o'clock showing on Friday. Now, keep in mind, my theater's been playing this on like most of the screens. Like this is the fucking Avengers. And
so
I went to a 12 o'clock showing. No one was there.
Oh, nice.
It was the only one there, and I thought, oh.
Here we go.
I was like, I hope this doesn't become another Divergent where it just like we end on a cliffhanger, and fucking surprise, it ends on a cliffhanger because Vin Diesel's been teasing up since when he did 6 and 7. He was about to do those. He has been teasing up of like I want to do a 2-parter, or at least I want to shoot 2 of these back to back and be like our like epic conclusion. And I think ever since 2014, he's been like, all right, I think 10's going to be the last one if we can get it up to that far. And then we'll see where we go from there. But yeah, I was the only one in my theater. And while I had a great time, I practically laughed. I cried. I spent $5 on this, and it was definitely fun.
Cool. So one of our listeners, Dadpool, says Fast 10 is the best of the franchise, hands down. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. So, so what overall your thoughts? Like now, truth be told, he's right. I stopped at Fast Five, but we're going to get into a lot of things here, but of the particular ones, because you have seen of them, where would you put this?
So in order to, before we even get to that part, I'll try to make this as brief as possible. And for anyone who wants to hear more of my thoughts on the franchise as a whole, go over on Spotify, check out Kale and Marley's. If you don't mind, I'm going to do a little quick.
Yeah, no, absolutely, go for it. I told you you could.
Check out Marley and Kale's podcast, which is still going on. I think as of this recording, they're going to be dropping Fast 10 in a couple of days with their whole spoiler podcast, and they go even more in depth of what we're going to go into. And they actually had to sit through all the Fast and Furious films, each the past 10 weeks or so leading up to this new one. It's called The Road to the Fast Saga, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
I was on there for Fast 5 and Furious 7, and I shit you not, Furious 7 was so long. Kale, in terms of our discussion for that, Kale, one of the co-hosts, had to split it into 2 parts because Spotify wouldn't allow him to upload a 3.5
and that just tells you
3.5 hour episode. Yeah,
that's crazy.
But as far as this franchise as a whole, what I love about the franchise is, unlike other ones, and yes, we will get to Jason Momoa in a minute. There's so much we can talk about.
Yeah, so he was. He says he was the best star they needed, best villain. It was cool to see 2 former Aquaman together. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, what I really love about this franchise, and what I hope other franchises do well, is that over the course of each installment, they evolve and change up. We were talking about Empire Strikes Back not too long ago, how that's a franchise that by the time they got to Empire, they needed to show hey, we can be a franchise. We're not just the one hit wonder. We can actually evolve and create more of these and actually explore some of these characters and themes and ideas. And while Fast and Furious doesn't really explore character, again, as you mentioned, it's not anything Oscar-worthy material, even though we have Oscar-winning actors on board.
And actresses.
Helen Mirren, Charlize Theron, Rita Moreno, and Brie Larson. But at the same time, though, I like that this series has evolved from being a knockoff of Point Break, which was, an undercover cop, infiltrating the underground, sports group or whatever. Point Break was a bunch of surfers. This one's called Fast Cars, illegal street racing, I should say. And now we've reached a point where this has become the most pretty much anime. It's as ridiculous as anime is, with the over the top action. You have really cool stunt work. Fast 5 has the vault chase we'll get into. 7 has, the cars flying out of planes. Even you see, I think you even saw this in the movie too, where Dom and Brian, they're in a Lycan Hypersport. They're jumping from building to building.
Yes. So,
but regardless of all that, what I love about it the most is not just how great the stunt works are, including in this one, but I get a kick out of how many times they have to retcon previous movies, and some of them are actually very clever. The way they got Letty back into the story, I thought was kind of clever, in my opinion, for as dumb as this is. And I thought the way they introduced Jason Statham as retcon of they retconned of oh, he's the one that supposedly killed Han in the post-credit scene for Fast 6. And it's things like that where it's very preposterous and ridiculous, but it's kind of like Saw, in that as each films go on, not only do the traps get ridiculous, but the way they try to retcon all of these twists and turns are very much a lot of it is very funny. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. And so that's why I love the Fast and Furious franchise. I mean, again, you can go over to the Road to the Fast Saga podcast and listen to us, myself ramble on these films, particularly with 5 and 7. But going back to this, go ahead.
This just goes to show you, okay? So this. One of the problems when you have this is such an inflated cast, okay? Yep. And so everybody that is in the film is here. So you have Diesel in the middle, obviously, okay? On the right, you have Momoa, you have Tyrese Gibson, you have Jordana Brewster, okay? You have I'm forgetting her name off the top of my head, but you have her, you have Sung Kang, you have Ludacris, and then you have the actress that plays her sister.
Natalie Emmanuel and Jordana Brewster.
Thank you. And then on the left, Okay, you have Charlize Theron, Michelle Rodriguez, Jason Statham, John Cena, who did absolutely nothing, and we'll get to him in a few minutes, Brie Larson, and Scott Eastwood. I compared this the other day to somebody like Infinity War.
It is.
But the difference is Infinity War had a story around it. And even Civil War. When you get to Civil War, like every single one of the characters has a backstory, and you care whether you're on Team Cap or Team Iron Man. And this, I mean, it's all Team Dom, but it's one of those things where, oh my God. And it was just crazy. And believe it or not, there's only 4 of them, 4 people that were here from the very beginning. And actually, one of them isn't here anymore. And that's Paul Walker.
Yeah.
So you had Paul Walker, you had Vin Diesel, you had Michelle Rodriguez, and you have Jordana Brewster. Mm. And, it's crazy to even think that. And, so I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent. So I was looking at the salaries for this. Because you think $340 million, okay, this has got to be by the way, one of the most expensive movies ever made. I mean, Indiana Jones is right up there, like $350. But nonetheless, the new one, Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I was looking at the salaries. So Diesel was getting $20 million. Obviously, it's his franchise, whatever. But then, so you have Jason Statham, okay, who's getting 15, and he barely in the movie. 2 scenes.
All of his scenes are in the trailer. It's
and then he got 15 million. Then, do you know how much Michelle Rodriguez would? By the way, she's one of the original 4. Do you know how much she got for this role?
How much?
$2.5 million, Matthew.
Oh.
$2.5 million. And she has been with us from the very get-go.
Well,
by the way, she looks good. But 20 years later, damn.
Yeah, for the most part, she's been with us. I mean, her, Jordana, and Vin, they did drop out on a couple of films. I mean, hell, like the second movie only has Paul Walker from the first one.
But still,
but yeah,
even Brie Larson. Okay, fine, she got $1 million. She was in a couple of scenes.
Yeah,
but like even John Cena made $1 million.
Yeah.
No, I just went, wow, that's crazy.
I think the other thing, too, as to why the budget on this was so big was not just all these actors, they're getting involved, even if it is for just a big scene. That was an awesome scene.
Yeah.
But I think really for me, it's the fact that you had also the Oscar-winning actresses come on board, like Charlize Theron.
Yeah, but she only made $1 million.
True, true. But But the other thing, too, I think we need to add on, and sort of the elephant in the room, is that we had our original director, Justin Lin, who wrote
the story on this.
Who co-wrote the script on this, co-produced it with a couple of other people, and he left about a few days into filming on this one just because he had enough with Vin Diesel shit, apparently. Like, there's rumors going around, and I don't know how accurate these are. Maybe it was all creative differences, but apparently there were rumors saying that Justin Lin left about a week into filming of this, like as they were filming, because of Vin Diesel being his tardiness. He kept, when he showed up, he was, couldn't remember his lines, and he wasn't in the right, like
he was being a diva, if you will.
Yeah, he was being a diva, exactly.
But
so when the news was announced of like, oh, Justin Lin's backing out of this, I'm like, oh wow, that's shocking, because like I said, Vin's been like, ever since 6, I think the whole cast and crew is like, we want Justin Lin back for a next film. He came back for 9, and then just dropped out of 10. I'm like, okay. And then I hear Louis Leterrier.
You sent me a tweet today. Tell me how many days. This is going to blow your mind, people.
Yeah.
Tell me how many days he came on with left. How many days was it?
It took him 3 days for him to get the call. And he had to apparently he had no prep time on this. He was practically playing with Justin Lin's blueprints and his, toys and his crew. And he had 3 days from the moment he was signed on as the director all the way to when he was going to start filming.
That's
and I recall he had to come in, do like uncredited rewrites and story ideas to bring in terms of like not necessarily like restructuring the whole thing, but just more like trying to make sure it fits within his own world, but not changing too much of the story. Because the story is essentially what Justin Lin had. There's actually elements in here that we'll get into that was Justin Lin's idea. Like this fight scene here, this was actually done. This whole fight scene between Charlize Theron and Michelle Rodriguez was done before Louis Leterrier was signed on board. I'm not sure if you caught this too, but there's a scene where Jason Statham and Han are at the door, and that whole little conclusion there, that whole tease of just Jason Statham, opening the door and it's Han, that was actually teased in 9 in the post-credit scene. So and the actor in the bag is the same actor from that film too. So when you probably saw it, you were like, "Who the hell is this guy?"
Yeah, exactly.
And all we know is that it was some guy. They have this like great throwaway joke in the 9 where the guy's like, "But wait, you already got all the information out of me. Why are you still beating the shit out of me in the bag?" And he's like, "How else do you think I get into this good of a shape, huh?" So, but it's the absurdity too.
Yeah.
Like this franchise embraces the absurdity, and it knows what it is, without having to make fun of without insulting the intelligence of the audience. And for me, that's again going back to what I like about this franchise is that I can keep my brain on and have a really entertaining time, just like a normal fun popcorn movie. But as a Fast and Furious fan, and even just trying to look through like all the logistics of all the stunt work, like these two would have would be like bruised and cut even more, especially with like Charlize Theron's head gets like thwacked against the glass and gets broken. It's like they would all have broken bones. Like they wouldn't survive this at all. One of them would be bleeding. But it's hilarious seeing like the physics they defy in this, and I think part of that is very funny for me. But yeah, it was interesting too, and going to the director, I'm also gonna go on a bit of a tangent here. I've never been a fan of Louis Leterrier's filmography that he's done. I know he did the first 2 Transporters, he did Clash of the Titans reboot, he did The Incredible Hulk, and Now You See Me. And all of them, in my opinion, I found either to be forgettable, boring, or bad. So coming into this, I thought, okay, I'm excited. We're getting another Fast and Furious film, but we'll see what happens with this director. And when it was over, I thought to myself, I gotta say, despite my issues with his, the way he told the story, and it felt a bit jumbled at times, I actually didn't mind Louis Leterrier's directing in this. At least the first act, like that whole opening all the way to Rome. I thought, okay, wow, this guy really proved me wrong. Like he's not a bad replacement director for Justin Lin. He's no Justin Lin, keep in mind, because when you watch some of the other earlier films that Justin Lin had directed, like Fast 5, it's miles above what Louis Leterrier is doing here. But still, it's a really impressive feat for him to come in and sort of replace Justin Lin and finish this movie. And even Michelle Rodriguez and Jordana Brewster said he practically saved the movie because it was, it had a release date locked in. They were ready to, they were still in the middle of filming, and then Universal's like, we cannot change the release date. You have to get it done by this date. And Louis came in and saved the production, I guess, according to them.
Yeah. So if this is a trilogy like Vin was teasing recently, could we see a Fast X title be a crossover with Rob Cohen coming back full circle as original Furious director and Triple X director?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
And I think even Vin Diesel said he wanted Rob Cohen to come back for 8, but they were like, nah, we'd rather not. And he has his own, like, if you go online, you'll find out that Rob Cohen is also an abusive asshole.
Yeah. I mean,
and he has his own histories.
Here's the thing. So I just did the story today. Right now, it is projected to make about $67 million, which is a little above the projections that it was going to get. So
it's not good though.
So no. Well, and this is where I'm getting at. So it's going to make around 320 total globally. This, in order to turn a profit, it's got to make to turn a profit around $800 to $850 million. That all being said, it's going to have a couple of weekends before June, but beyond that, the majority of this money is going to have to be made overseas.
Yeah.
So the last film, okay, Fast 9, the Fast Saga, made $173 million domestic. That will be lucky. If this hits 200 million domestic, that will be an achievement.
Yeah.
I just don't see how they're going to be able to recoup any or all of their money. And that being said, a trilogy for this, I'll be honest with you, Dad. Deadpool, I can't see even, they're going to lose so much money with this. Now, obviously, we're going to have another one. We're going to get to the end credit scene in a couple minutes.
Yeah.
But the fact is, I can't see them making 2 more of these. 1 more? Absolutely.
Sure.
I think what they would probably, and by the way, they already have if you go on IMDb right now, they actually have, and I'm sure it was just photoshopped, it said Fast X Part 2. But
no. Vin Diesel did reveal that at the con.
Okay. So then,
so that picture.
By the way, yeah.
But the thing about me though is that even as a Fast and Furious fan, and this has always been my biggest issue with this franchise ever since Paul passed away, unfortunately, is they've always had the issue of no matter how many films they do. I've even had this issue with 8, which apparently a lot of people love, and that's fine. But you're never gonna fulfill that that empty hole that was there from Paul, that Paul left on this franchise. Like,
no.
He's the guy, the main character of this film, and you expect to do more than what you're like. I'm even surprised they made it this far.
Yeah.
To where it's like we're on the 10th one, we have a cliffhanger, and and Vin's like, oh yeah, we might make this a trilogy. It's like no, the next one. And on top of that, it's like if Paul were still around, I'd be rooting for this and be like, fuck yeah, let's do more of these. But he's not, and they're lucky enough that they were able to get this far, like I said. And I actually like this one and the last one compared to the ones that they've had like post Fury 7 without Paul. It's the big surprise for me because he really was for me the biggest reason why I think this franchise succeeded was that he was the yin and yang of
no, absolutely. I mean, you went back to Point Break earlier. I mean, you had, Patrick Swayze, okay, and then you had, Keanu Reeves, and it was that perfect sentiment, the perfect yin and yang, and it worked. Let's touch on Rome real quick because I thought that was one of those things. And like I said, I had to turn my brain off for this, but it was like crazy, and. I mean, you just see this thing rolling down and cars blowing up, and
I was laughing my ass off. I was applauding to the whole thing. I was like, "Oh my god, yes, do it!" I'm
just trying to, curb this thing, and meanwhile, Jason's over there just sitting there and just having a good old time, and I'm like, okay, that's gonna happen because of course, he's not going to, it's not going to blow up. Or if it does, it's going to, be somewhere where it's away from the people.
Yeah.
And then he, of course, says, in his line, "Oh, I'll take care of it." And he goes and he hits the crane.
Yeah.
He hits the crane, jumps off the thing, launches himself, hits the crane. It turns around, hits the bomb perfectly, square where it needs to be, right at the right angle. And the thing just breaks the bridge, right in the ocean, and boom, blows up Rome.
Yeah, it still blows up Rome. It's just
like, oh my god, how? But I'll say this much: like the shot where one of the shots there that was really cool. That I'm gonna see if I can't bring it up is that shot with Dom standing in front of the Coliseum. That was for me. That was at the time. In real time, that was a cool shot.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay. But yeah, I mean, but that whole Rome sequence, it was about a 20-minute sequence.
You know what?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Don't believe it.
Yeah.
I will say I really like the Rome sequence a lot. I was actually surprised at like, wow, I'm actually engaged with this a lot more than I expected. Because when I saw Louis Leterri's other films, I'm like, yeah, the action scenes are cool, but it's just like, I don't really give a shit. But this, I was like, wow, I'm kind of like on the edge of my seat. What's going to happen? And even like them defying the laws of physics, I was laughing hysterically, like I said. I'll even do you one better. I thought the way they introduced Dante in the Fast Five, like how they recap Fast Five,
Hmm.
and show Dante with his
With his
dad and
father,
such.
which,
And
by the way, I don't know the actor's name off the top of my head. That was the same guy that played in Clear and Present Danger.
yep, yeah, I think
Yeah.
he was in that. And even though I like because like I said, I just rewatched Fast Five recently for the Road to the Fast Saga recently, and I noticed that not only did they use the same footage and even showed Brian in there, and it was nice to see Brian in there, even
Hmm.
though if it is the same sequence just told from a different perspective, it was cool to see him back in the Fast
Yeah,
and Furious franchise.
absolutely.
But the other thing I noticed was that there were a couple of times during it where I'm like, oh, they're using alternative takes because there's a shot where with like when Dom gets out of the car, you could clearly tell they like reverse the footage for him
Yeah,
getting out of the
absolutely.
car.
Yeah, no, I
And
saw.
and then even when Brian and Dom are grabbing the little like the wires over to the vault, I noticed it was a different angle because I'm like, that's not a CG double. That's actually Brian, and it's going
Yeah.
past this like debris. And I'm like, oh, cool. They got that. So yeah, it kind of makes me wonder because by the way, we know Brian will come back in this franchise. We know
Oh,
he will.
absolutely.
Like in the present day, he is coming back probably.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a matter of like how much archive footage they have left that they could use. But more on that
Yeah.
another time.
So
Um,
speaking of that, with retconning the storylines to move along the narrative, do you think Carter Veron from Too Fast has any behind the scenes involvement and could
I,
just show up in part two?
I don't think he will. It was just that was just more like a one and done kind of story. Like I know people are like, oh, well, wouldn't it be cool if we got all these other super villains that they faced in the past? It's like
I mean,
I don't know. I feel like Dante is more teased up like this Thanos, where it's just like he's going to be the big bad guy of this franchise or of this big finale. Um, but yeah, and
yeah.
speaking of Dante, we haven't even mentioned him at all.
No, and that's the thing. Like, so we see at the very beginning of the film, okay, and we see that everything that happens, and we see that what happens at the bridge, and so he gets thrown off into the ocean, and the car flips over, goes into the other car where his father was,
Yeah,
and by the way, and I'll get to that in a minute. So then we see him laying in the ocean, his eyes open, and then okay,
he's
so
like the Terminator.
yeah, exactly. He's the big bad, and so I mean, I'll be honest, for as packed as this was, he was actually not bad. Although there were a couple of scenes where I was a little like, huh?
But which
I mean,
one
for
in
example,
particular?
well, I mean, he's sitting there talking to two dead bodies with tape on them.
Oh, I love that
And,
scene so much.
I
Oh my
mean,
god.
I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I understand how maniacal he's supposed to be and how like whimsical and I mean, I heard it the other day. 1 minute he's the Joker from crazy, and the next thing he's like,
just for the sake of it.
he's painting somebody's toenails, and it's just like he's listening to opera music, and it's like, okay, we got somebody who's pretty unstable here, and I get it, but no, I thought for what he was pretty cool.
Han even called him the madman, declared war on us.
I mean, but yeah, no, he was good. He for everything that, even if this film was a mess, it was still he was really, really fun.
For me,
yeah.
For me though, I haven't like that another issue I have with this franchise usually is that the villains in this, except for the two Shaw brothers, Owen and Deckard Shaw.
Mm-hmm.
Deckard you saw here, Owen was in Fast 6. And I thought those two were the only interesting foes for the crew or family, so to speak, to go up against, because they were actually a little bit interesting characters, especially Deckard Shaw. And you could tell Jason Statham was having a ball with Furious 7, and I'm glad they got him out of that debacle or unfortunate circumstance they had with Furious 7 with Paul's passing. But it was nice to see Statham back. But what it was even cool too was like Jason Momoa, as you said, is just having a ball, and in my opinion, he's probably my second favorite villain of this franchise so far, just because he really brings a lot of the energy that this film needed, or at least to bring a little bit of life to it. Because while I don't think this is necessarily stale, this franchise so far, I definitely do agree that this needs to end soon. And if it is going to end, we need a foe that is entertaining or fun to watch, or at least just like someone that's going to be like an intimidating presence for the crew. And that's where Dante came in. And I thought Jason Momoa was having a blast with this. And funny enough, like, and I like Jason Momoa a lot in some of these other films like Dune, and even though I hated Aquaman, I thought he was fine in it. This is the kind of energy from the film I wanted out of Aquaman. you know, like because it looked like frenetic energy. Is doing exactly what it knows it is. Where I thought like Aquaman was just like taking itself too seriously, and it was just like very conflicted, and it dragged on at times with that. Whereas this, I thought it went on fast enough. I think the biggest issue I did have with the film, though, is that after that whole Rome set piece, when we continued the story, it gets a bit jumbled, and I like some of the other story elements. Like John Cena has a really good subplot with Little B.
So I mean, let's speaking of that, let's talk about Zena's character, because it was one of the ones where so we find out he's his brother in 9, and so. Okay. And the thing is, like, I will say one thing. I thought the boy, he was good.
It was fine.
I mean, he was fine. He was really good. I mean, for me, I enjoyed him. But Xena was like, okay, he was playing off the, we were first introduced to him in the, when they break in and everything else. And, it's just like, and then, I will say one thing, that the one cool scene they had was on the plane. Right, so he's like, follow me back to the plane. They follow him back, and then the alcohol. That was pretty fun.
I also want to point out too that the flight attendant. I'm not sure if you knew who this was. It was played by Meadow Walker, who is Paul Walker's daughter, and she had. I'm not sure if you knew that.
No.
So what happened was she has been in touch with Vin Diesel and the cast. She's great friends with Jordana Brewster and Michelle Rodriguez. And I think Vin Diesel even walked Meadow Walker down the aisle when she got married a couple years back, because that's how close Vin Diesel and Paul were, practically brothers. Yeah. And she had always wanted to be in the franchise. She just didn't know when that would be. And I think it was one of those cases where it was almost like, this franchise is wrapping up. I think now is the time I want to pay tribute to my dad. And by doing so, she wears her traditional blue flight attendant, and blue is associated with the color of Brian O'Connor's cars that he typically drove in the previous films. And it was a nice scene too, especially with
now I'm gonna talk. Go ahead.
Especially with John Cena when Little B asked, like, who was that? Oh, just an old friend, sent up from the high above, as a reference to Paul.
Yeah,
heaven.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really nice scene, and it was
absolutely.
It was, and that's another thing I like too about this franchise. I keep jumping over you with this, but what I like about this franchise post 7 is there's enough references or callbacks or even paying tributes to the Brian O'Connor character, because you could tell even when they made 7 and they finished that film for Paul. You could tell that the entire cast and crew had huge admiration and respect for this guy. Not only because he was in this franchise for all except for Tokyo Drift, that was the only one he didn't show up in, but he's been in all the films from 1 through 7, and he was a really nice and sincere guy. And when you hear all these stories about him, about how sweet he was, how heartfelt he was, and just a really kind dude, it kind of breaks your heart a little bit, like, wow, like it sucks that he died when he did, because it just makes it all the more tragic as to
absolutely,
like we could have seen a lot more from this guy.
The development there could have been immense. So Coco is saying this one is way better than 9, and it was just a fun time. I mean, look, I had a blast. I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, I turned my brain off, and I mean. But getting back, I did, because I couldn't, but getting back to Xena's character, it was one of those things where he had absolutely nothing to do. And he was supposed to be the watchful guardian of the kid and everything else, but it just didn't. I mean, he had a couple. I mean, the funniest scene. That's the other thing this film tried to do, at least for me. I caught myself laughing a couple times. I mean, the one gag that I really like is getting back to the blue car. Was when the kid comes around the corner, he sees this Ford Raptor. He's like, "Oh yeah, I can't believe it." He's like, "No, dude, I'm over here." He's like,
Yeah.
And that got me laughing. That was pretty funny.
Yeah,
but it was a blue car.
And that was the same blue car that his younger character rode. They did like you'll have to watch 9 for more detail, but that was like a race he did with Dom and a flashback for 9. Same car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing, though. And so, he was even saying, "Oh, this is the first car I had." And of course, he goes through the tapes, showing his age and pops in the tunes and everything else. And he's
good vibrations.
Good vibrations. And he's, dancing. But it's one of those things where, I mean, he didn't. So, I mean, his sacrifice. Okay, fine. Let's, but, there's so many. So let's talk about a couple others, like Tyrese Gibson. I mean, the whole thing of him trying to be a leader and everything else. And I mean, one of the things that I will say, I don't want to say, it really wasn't even funny to me. It was like when all the money gets stolen, right?
Yeah.
When they get hacked and all the money gets stolen. And he's like, "Well, why are you so calm?" And he opens his thing and takes
call back to Too Fast, Too Furious with the money in the vest.
And I'm like, and maybe it's me not knowing the callbacks or anything, but it's like, okay. Yeah. And then I'm like, all right. But it's just, of course they had to make up after they had to fight. See, they're both like, should we step in? And like, nah, let him go at it. Nah, and then Han has the muffin. Is,
the one aspect even I'd criticized about 9, and you could very much tell, like, Chris Morgan, who's been attached to these films as a writer since from Tokyo Drift all the way to Fate of the Furious. That's 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. If you're doing your math.
Mm-hmm.
And he, even though the writing in these films aren't spectacular, him and Justin Lin working together in 4, 5, and 6 have really brought in what the franchise needed, especially like, funny humor, at least for me, with Roman and Tej, like in 5 and 6, they have some like really funny moments. And it seems like since 9 and 10, it almost seemed like Justin Lin, when he wrote those scripts, he wanted to, what was it? He wanted to, recapture that like glory of sorts of like the Roman and Tej bickering back and forth, but he doesn't have the right comedic beats to do it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was also that's also my issue here with this, is that while I think, Dante's a really fun villain to watch, and I laugh at how ridiculous his character was and over the top he was, but in a fun way. And I like John Cena with his own arc, even though, you're right, he technically didn't serve much of a purpose except the big finale. But I thought the Roman and Tej stuff for the most part was very much like, okay, come on, let's go, come on. This isn't as funny as you guys think it is. That's always been kind of an issue with me with these last 2 films. But so you got to work with what you got to work with.
No, I understand that. So you have, so he goes back to Rio, and he, then they had the big street race, right? And the big street race was, we see go ahead. You were about to say something.
Which is something, that whole race sequence in Rio de Janeiro, that was something that Louis Leterrier, that was one of the ideas that he had, was this is a Fast and Furious film. We got to put in a race sequence.
Absolutely.
In here. And that was something I'm like, oh, okay. All right. That's all right. And I had fun with that, especially with the way it introed. It's very, typical Fast and Furious fashion.
No, definitely.
Shots, the fast cars, loud music. So
yeah, absolutely. So then, basically I didn't know this, but knowing one of the films or 2 of the films, she's her sister, the actress.
Was it Ratcatcher's daughter from the
yeah.
She's the sister of Elena.
So of course, so that makes that come full circle. I mean, it looks to me like they're trying to tie up anything and everything that they can with putting callbacks in there too. I
Yep.
mean, a little fan service, sure, okay. Callbacks, definitely, and you know, I mean, it's one of those things where we know that we're going to be getting it. Well, let's put it this way: we know we're going to be getting at least 2 or 3 more characters back for the next film. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about Brie Larson real quick. Okay, so she is the daughter of,
Mr. Nobody.
Mr. Nobody, and so it's one of those things. Mark my words, Kurt Russell is going to be in the final film. Okay,
Maybe.
I not maybe. He absolutely is going to be in the last.
I don't know. We don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, well, just that proves my point. Yeah. Because we haven't seen him and he was only talked about. Okay, we're going to get him in the next film. It's just they were going to reconcile whatever differences that they had or may not have had or whatever. And Kurt Russell is going to be in the final film, even for a couple of scenes. I mean, Brie Larson was only in it for maybe 10 minutes. I mean, one of the funniest scenes was when she walks in the bar looking for Dom.
Yeah.
She's got the, can I get a shot? And of course, she takes a hold of the bartender's shotgun and whatever else. But I mean, that whole sequence. But so he's absolutely going to come back. I mean, the ones that are probably going to be exchanged out, okay, are Helen Mirren and Rita Moreno. Those two are going to be in the next. If I had to guess, those two are not going to be in the next one.
I think Helen Mirren might pop up for a quick scene. For the
one or two. Well, I mean, she was only in one scene when she was trying to get a hold of what's his face.
Yeah, Jason.
So,
Dom. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that there. And Rita, maybe not. That would be one scene too. But my guess is you're probably going to get Kurt Russell back, and you're going to get, you're going to get somebody else back. I mean, hell, we even had one shot. So the other one that's going to be in, I put money on it, is Gal Gadot. So she was she was a major play at the end of the film where, this is after the big fight that they have, and Letty's trying to climb up the thing.
And like 20 stories later.
Yeah, guess what? She finally gets to the top, and guess what? It's snowing. Yeah, and you're like, Antarctica. Where the fuck are we? And so it says, it's Antarctica. And you're like, ah. So the next shot you see is she comes back down pretty quick. She's like kind of chilly up there, huh? So she, Charlize throws her a jacket, and it's like, okay. And then at the end of the film, they managed to get out, and then you see this submarine, which, by the way, I remember that Fast and Furious movie that had the submarine in it. And yeah, and then we see Gadot. She opens the thing, and she's got the binoculars, and it's like, and Letty's like, no way.
Yep.
And I just went, okay. Yep. So she's coming back. My guess is Kurt Russell's coming back. So you're just gonna be. It's just gonna be like a jigsaw puzzle.
Look. Here's the thing. If Owen Shaw could survive being thrown out of a 300,000-mile plane, then so can she. Okay. We've seen these characters survive deaths.
Well, look at Han. This is for Han, right?
Han faked his death. That's all that was with Fast 9. It's like, oh, Mr. Nobody put like a hologram inside my car.
It was AI the whole time. We didn't know. But so.
But the one thing I will say about Brie Larson, I was a little bit disappointed by. I'm curious to see where they're going to go with the next one if they are going to bring her back. I thought when the trailers came out, I had assumed that Brie Larson's character was going to play the sister of Brian O'Connor, because if you remember in Fast 5, he doesn't up to that point in when Paul Walker was still around. We never really knew too much about Brian. It was Brian's family heritage, other than he didn't know too much about his dad, and wasn't really around that much. And all we know is that he had a childhood, and he grew up with Roman Pierce in juvie boosted car, and I think they both ended up boosted cars together. But we don't know much else besides that. And I thought they were going to tease up that Brie Larson was going to be the younger sister of Brian or whatever it was, and I thought, oh, okay, that's kind of a clever way of not only doing these ridiculous retcons, but also doing it in a way that keeps Brian's presence in these movies is through her, much like how Brian's presence has been in this one and the last one through the presence of Mia, who has 2 kids with Brian, Jack O'Connor, and apparently I'm being told Olivia O'Connor is their daughter's name from Furious 7. So, but no, I'm curious if they're going to bring her back for the next one.
I mean, I think she was cheap enough in this movie, and I think that if they're going to be able to tie something together with Mr. Nobody, that I think they'll do it. I think they'll do it, and it's a matter of how you do that. But I was just So I mean. So once the third act starts, it's like, okay, everybody's trying to get where they're trying to be, and they're going after each other, and you've got, like I said, you have this storyline, you have the other storyline, then you have the fight on the bridge. Okay, so it's
the
one
same
of those
bridge
things,
from Fast Five, yeah,
right. So excuse me. So it's like, okay, he's, and once again, I suspended reality. What he's doing is he takes the rebar, okay, twists it, okay. Meanwhile, he's getting shot at behind the thing, and he lifts the car up and positions it, and so the car just does a complete, I don't know, angle thing. Bing, 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 bing. And he starts knocking the cars out like pinballs. And it's like,
that was great. I love that so much.
And so, he's like, okay, that was impressive.
Yeah.
I love that so much. And so, I mean, it wasn't even. So, of course, Brie Larson's character, she gets shot. She goes and the sister saves her. And it's like, okay, so, I mean, they're basically saying, look, she didn't have a lot to do in this film, but she's going to have a really lot to do in the next film.
Yeah, hopefully.
And I think Stratham, too, is going to be one of those guys that he was only in a couple of scenes, and he's going to have quite a bit to do in the next film. And, I mean, so it's one of those things where, and of course, so John, so his character sacrifices himself, and then you have the scene on the highway. He's like, okay, son, it's time to finish the lesson, and so he's like, and so he jumps in the car, and it's just like, okay, that's cool, whatever, that's fine. And then they get caught on the bridge or on the dam, and I'm like, okay, this is completely, it gave me a little Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom vibes, but it was
I didn't even think about that. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, with another bridge, but nonetheless, so he's got the 2 trucks, and he's like,
in hell.
Yeah, radioing the thing. And by the way, speaking of the radio, so Dom's driving, and even with what's his face, he's got the CB, and I guess Letty has it attached in her helmet when she's got on the motorcycle.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like. Okay, but nonetheless, these are things I just let go of. Okay, that's fine.
Well, and I think they also established too, like they're all like, at least up until Dante came into the picture, they were all like multi-millionaire people because they stole Hernan Reyes' money. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's like, okay, they just bought their tech. Okay,
yeah, and I mean that was the whole gag, right? Mm-hmm. That was the whole gag of them. Once the bank account gets drained and he's got the money, then they had to go do that. The guy rats him out, okay, because they're on Interpol. And that's when they go to Jason Statham's character, and he gets them all the next scene you walk in, and he's got all this all these guns and high-tech toys, and, he's like, nothing's for free. I'm just like, okay. But you see him on the dam, and then he's, got the remote control. Meanwhile, the remote control car.
Yeah.
I mean, he said he wanted to drive. I mean, that's the thing. This movie made me laugh a couple of times, but it tried to be too funny. it tried to insert jokes, I think, that just didn't work.
Yeah.
And it was fine. I mean, I laughed a couple of times out loud, whether it was the truck scene or, when the boy walked out and thought it was the truck or the RC or whatever. But otherwise, some of these other gags just didn't land. And maybe that's because I hadn't watched the films. That could be something.
And the other thing too about this is I thought for my big issue with the film was, and this is what I always have an issue with this whenever they do it, they split a story into two parts. It's almost like, where is this third act in this part one story? And for this in particular, like when we got to, you see Little B, killing killing these mercs with Uncle Jacob. And they end up going on the highway, and you see, some of the trailer where Dom's backing out of a plane and onto the highway and, saving Jacob's ass. I thought to myself, I was like, oh wow, like it was around that part and maybe a little bit beforehand where I was like, are we still we're still in the second act? How is this? Like I was actually asking myself, like, how is this going to end? Like, where's the third act? And when we got to the bridge in their corner, and I thought, you got to be kidding me. This cannot be your third act. Like, this is where you're going to, because I kind of predicted that the dam would be like the big final set piece.
Mm-hmm. And it was.
Not just because of the trailers, just because I thought, if you're going to end this on a cliffhanger, and if this is our cliffhanger,
no,
don't be surprised if fans get pissed at you, Vin.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, what does he do? He jumps off the cliff. And or they're not the cliff, but the dam, and it's the bridge, and it's just like, okay, they're racing down, and they fall in the water. They manage to make it out, and it's just like, okay, and I went, yeah, I mean that's basically,
Anytime these people defy logic, is like, okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah, no, because about the seventh time it happens, you start to believe it, and it's like. But nonetheless, I mean, and that's the thing. It was this was a popcorn blockbuster movie. And I think the biggest thing is that, look, you got to suspend disbelief. You got to, because while there may be, quote, Academy Award winning actresses on this, they're not going to, I would suspect that Brie Larson's going to have a big role in the next one. I think that Kurt Russell's going to come back. I think that. So let's get to the elephant in the room, because before any of this happened, last Friday, the rap.
God.
Okay, let's get to the elephant in the room, because this is something that has to be talked about. Okay, it's one of those things where. Basically, the rap, Humberto Gonzalez, dropped an absolute. I was getting ready to get a haircut, and one of my buddies on Twitter says, "The rap just spoiled it." I went, "What?" And all I did was look at the headline, and anybody who has seen the headline goes, "Oh God, really?" And the whole thing got spoiled. Now, there's a couple of theories behind it. So anybody who, obviously, this is Spoilercast, we're going to be talking about it.
Yeah, I actually have a theory. I think Louis Leterrier said as to why that happened. So, not with the leak, but go ahead with your.
Yeah. So basically, Humberto had said that The Rock is going to be coming back. So he is in the post-credit scene. Now, I got to ask, because I only saw the one. Were there one or two post-credit scenes?
Just the one, I think.
Okay.
I had to leave afterwards.
Okay. So the only post-credit scene that I saw was The Rock. And so, there was a bunch of mercs that come in, and they're looking around, and it was kind of like, it was that other shot. By the way, there were a couple of great shots in this film. One of them, as I said, being the shot in Rome. The other one is when Vin is, he walks into that place, the abandoned police station, and all those monitors around him, and you see the lights. It was. I had a little flashback to like Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, there's like a split diopter shot.
It was a really cool shot.
Yeah,
but nonetheless, so you see that all these people come in
It's like
you
a
see
slaughter or whatever it is.
exactly one individual, and knowing you can kind of tell because of his build and everything else. I'm like, all right, the phone's ringing, and he walks over to the phone, and then he takes it off. He takes his mask off, and of course it's a rock.
Yep.
And it's just like, and so so the Rock is definitely going to be in the next picture.
And here's the thing, they had I remembered, I think it was Vin and Dwayne, they've had their own beef, and Vin even tried convincing him to come back, and he's like, no,
I remember this.
I'm never coming back ever. And so Louis Leterrier talked with, I think it was I don't think we're even getting a Hobbs and Shaw spinoff. So
over
unders. I don't think that's going to happen. Like we're going to get lucky enough if he does come back for this one, if he does.
Yeah.
But the what was I going to say? The
yeah, no. So it was.
So now I remember.
Yeah.
So Louis Leterrier came up with the concept for the post-credit scene, and he pitched it to Universal, and Universal said, "Okay, we love the idea. Let's try to get the rocket." Right. So they thought, all right, we'll give him, talk to his team, talk to him. It's like, hey, we understand your history with this franchise. We get it. We totally understand. But watch the movie first. We'll let you watch the movie first, experience it as it is, and let us know if you want to be a part of it. So they, presented him like a rough cut of the film, and after that, he was like, okay, I'm in. Let's do this. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So a couple of things that, so actually, real quick, he basically said, really, he's like, so to his point, he said you just basically said that right real quick, over under 65% we see Hobbs and Shaw 2 or different. Why do you think that?
Because the fact that this franchise overall is running on fumes, and it's running out quick. Like, yeah, it's doing well internationally, but we've seen films bomb here domestically, and we've never seen another entry to that franchise. Or if we do, it takes us more than 10 years. So I don't know if they would want to do another one of the franchise. I think the intention for Louis Leterrier to get him back on board was to have him back for the big finale. I don't think it was going to be anything more than to do a spin-off and so on, because I think Dwayne just wants to do his own thing.
Yeah, now I'm looking at the numbers though, Matthew, okay? And this made $760 million worldwide. It made $586 million overseas, and a little over $170 million here in the States. Now, look, the other thing too is that they did tease, that whole thing at the end. I mean, so, well, that's where we're going to get to. They never paid off the ending of Hobbs and Shaw. So, I mean, I think you could, hypothetically speaking, I mean, it would be kind of tough because, I mean, they could always push Fast X Part 2 back, but...
Well, they probably will because of the writer's strike going
on. Well, now they will, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think the thing is that this actually would be beneficial for them, because if they came out with a Hobbs and Shaw 2, and before you came out with a Fast X Part 2, I think it would get peaked, because with that kind of money, doing 760, I think that, it could reinvigorate some people.
I don't think it will, because I think we're now at a point in this franchise where you got to end this soon or you're done. Because I really don't think we're getting another Hobbs and Shaw movie, and if we are, it'll be after we complete this main series.
Well, here's the thing, though, too. You don't have to pay everybody. What I mean by that is you have two people. Yeah. You have The Rock and Statham. That's it.
Yeah, but
those are your big names.
Sure, but also too, they may want a good chunk of the cash because, Dwayne's probably, let's.
Well, I mean, look at it this way: Diesel got 20, and Statham got 15.
Yeah.
So I mean, right there, it was $55.5 million. You had 5 characters, okay, of the 10 or 11 that you had, okay. Either Michelle made 2.5, which, by the way, I'm firing her agent, okay? I'm firing her. She's been one of the four people in that franchise for 21, 22 years. And the most you can get out of it is $2.5 million.
Yeah.
Like, really?
And
You see these other things?
Yeah, she also went on record to say that she actually almost left the franchise after 8 because of the lack of female representation in the franchise altogether. And she even had to fight for her own character in the very first movie, if you remember, where she was going to be the sort of like the love triangle for Dom and Brian. But when she was reading the script originally, she was like, nah, I'm not playing this character. You either rewrite this or I'm out. And they rewrote it and added the Jordana Brewster Mia character into the story for the first one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes me actually, and I may do this today after the spoiler cast. I actually want to go back and see how much of all of the films what her salary was, because there's no way after 22 years, okay, that she and being in we'll call it 7 films, 8 films, that in being in 8 films. You're telling me $2.5 million is the best she could do?
Yeah.
Give me a break. Anyways, but getting back to that, I think you could put together a Hobbs and Shaw too. You know, having to only, I mean, look, he got $15 million for this, so he'd be getting, you wouldn't give him any more than $15 million for that. And fine, The Rock gets 20 to 30 million. The same thing Diesel got. And there's nobody else. I mean, when I say nobody else, I mean nobody substantial.
Yeah. And again, you'll have to go more onto the Road to the Fast saga, because I think Cale and Marley went into more detail as to why Hobbs and I don't think we're ever getting another Hobbs and Shaw, and I think part of the reason is just because Vin doesn't want to tie into this spin-off back into the franchise.
So okay, so here's the $64,000 question that he just posed. How would you guys close the franchise? I'm curious. I'll let you go first.
So, because I know these characters more than you.
Yeah, absolutely.
You stopped after 5. You're like,
no. I got checked out, but go ahead.
I would say the only way you could do this is obviously you bring back the 2 characters we already mentioned that were teased in this one. I really think they're going to bring Brian back. I seriously think they're going to bring Brian back. How exactly? I don't know. But I think Brian's going to come back into play. I'd be curious to see, because we've already seen previous entries where characters have died and then they come back.
Oh,
so I sort of doubt that whole plane explosion that happened. I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing is Brian's going to come back, and apparently Jordana Brewster said, we'll see if it actually does play into effect, or maybe it'll be in like a spin-off movie. But she would like to see her character's kids come into the story, because that's the one aspect I did like about 9, and even a little bit of this, is that they gave her a little bit to do in terms of like the action set pieces and be a part of the crew, because that was something I always thought. And I get it. These actors, they all have like scheduling conflicts. Like when Jordana Brewster did like 5 through 7, I think she was working on Dallas at the time for TNT, so she couldn't do a whole lot of action stunts in those movies because she was off doing a TV show. But now that she's sort of free, she gets to do whatever she wants. It would be nice to see her come back more into the game like they did with 9, which was cool. So I would say, like I said, the biggest thing is the 2 characters, as we mentioned in this, that were teased. They're coming back, and then obviously Brian and Mia will probably come back into the mix. I mean, you've gone on for like what 8, 9, and 10, and we haven't even seen Brian in person, and Vin. And like I said, Vin and the whole cast and crew, they've been teasing up. Even the brothers of Paul Walker have said, like, we want to see Paul one last time in this franchise. I don't know how they're going to do it, because there's a whole like.
Yeah, no. Well, okay. So this is a perfect segue. So to your point, so Tom Hanks, okay, actually just did he was actually just asked about this the other day, and I did a story about this, and he basically said, I could go on and live forever. Yeah. Okay. Because the fact is, you have, right now you have the technology, okay, it's not as good, okay, and look, I haven't seen Indiana Jones yet, but it'll be interesting. But right now, you have the technology to do de-aging. Now, I'm getting to this in a minute. Bear with me. The fact is, I mean, you take a look at something like Rogue One, okay, where they, did something a little something like with Carrie Fisher or even Grand Moff, okay. Now those were just two quick stills, two shots, okay, fine. Doing a whole character, now you're talking about the acting and everything else. And what the article basically entailed was you can do all of this de aging you want, but the fact is that you have guys like a Harrison Ford who's in his 80s, okay, or let's say for The Irishman, okay, with Al Pacino and Joe Pesci and De Niro, they're up there in age, so you're not getting that same physical performance that you would before. So it would be very difficult, okay, and I'm not saying impossible because anything is possible, but it would be very difficult to actually have, because look, right now we see how much a movie like Indiana Jones costs.
Yep.
Okay. And the majority of that, okay, is for the de-aging process. I mean, it's that simple. So you're going to have to either sacrifice the story or you're going to have to sacrifice your budget. One of the two. And with one of the, like Harrison Ford, I don't know what he's going to get. I don't know what he got for it. Okay. But I can't imagine it's that much. And so it's going to be fascinating to see, somehow, I mean, who knows? Maybe they go into the multiverse. I don't know. I mean, I'm kidding.
Well, the one thing I was going to say was the one thing that I've always advocated this, that if they are going to bring Brian back, have him for like a simple barbecue at the end of the film, like a cookout with the whole family. Because it's not, because you're spending a lot of time on this one scene, and that's it. You don't have to spend, you don't have to scatter throughout the film. Because that was the one thing about Furious 7 I remembered was I think the budget of that originally was like 190 million originally, and then because of Paul's passing and they had to use archive footage and get a digital on board to fix the problem along with Cody and Caleb as stand-ins, it ballooned the budget up to like 250 million, I think. So and they had to push it back another year just to get the Weta digital special effects on.
So it was 190. Fast 7.
Yeah, I think that was the original budget. I'm pretty sure it was a lot. It was a little bit higher when they had Brian on. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. It just I hope that they do it in a tasteful way.
Oh, they will. They really absolutely will.
And really, the two biggest things about this franchise as to why, if we're wrapping up to our final thoughts on this, as to what would make me be like, why aren't you done with this franchise, Matt? And granted, I want to see an ending to this. I want to see this franchise end. I don't want to end on a cliffhanger and have another Divergent scenario where we never get that conclusion. But at the same time, I think the two biggest things you'd have to do for me to be turning against this, like some other diehard fans are, one, be boring. And so far, this franchise hasn't gotten boring.
No.
They've had some lulls in a couple of films, like 2 and 3 and 8, in my opinion, or Hobbs and Shaw. But also, I think the biggest crime that the franchise would have to commit, besides the absurd shit that they're doing, which I'm fine with and it's hilarious, keep doing it, is if they were to kill off Brian. Because you do that, you're spitting in the face of not just his legacy in this franchise, but you're ruining what you did, having that emotional and powerful send off in Furious 7. I'm not sure if you ever saw the ending for.
Yes, I did.
Okay. But it was a really emotional and touching moment, and it was like, wow, like it was very tastefully done, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm crying at a Fast and Furious film. Hell, my brother and dad were, and they rarely cry. Well, they never cry at a Fast and Furious film. But that would be the biggest sin I think this franchise would have to commit, is to bring back Brian just to kill him off. But knowing Vin Diesel and knowing the cast and crew, they're not going to do it, because it's like, because then it just shows how much they hated Paul and his family. They're like, yeah, fuck you, but they're not. So that's really the two biggest sins this franchise would have to commit for me to be like, I'm done with this. Because we've seen other franchises, go beyond of, they're like, guys, you're being boring. There's nothing interesting or new about this at all, or making it fun. And this hasn't reached that for me yet.
Yeah, that's the key things. I think that. So to answer your question, how I'd like to see it end, it has to be done, and you hit the nail on the head. It has to be done respectfully. It has to be done tastefully. I don't care about the wild and crazy things. Kill the bad guy, okay? You know, Dom and Letty go home and live happily ever after with their son, okay? And you know, um, if I'm going to compare it to like a heist type of movie, I'm going to compare it to like the Italian Job, where you know he gets the girl. I mean, he's always had the girl, but he goes home, he lives happily ever after with her. Everybody gets what they want,
Yeah.
okay, and so who knows? You may even see those two characters get married. I mean, that's how
What, Dom and
outrageous.
Letty?
No, not Dom and Letty. God, I keep forgetting her name. Forgive me, but yeah. So it's no, they've. But hold on. Let me get because I want to get the name of the character correct. So it's bear with me. Yeah,
'Cause
it's
I'm kind of wondering like which character you're talking about. I'm like,
no,
what?
no. So it's Ramsey. Ramsey,
Oh.
because there was that scene where she's like, basically, will you marry me? He's like, she's like, oh, well, only in your dreams,
Yeah, jokes
type of
her,
thing.
yeah.
I could see that happening. I mean, they get married. Everybody just wants to see happily ever after, and I think you're going to see that regardless of how it is. Probably, Brie Larson's character and Kurt Russell's character, they reconcile. You're going to see, Dom and Letty have a happy love. Maybe Ramsey gets married. Jason, his character gets killed off. Everybody's just, and that's how it's going to end. I can't see this,
Yeah. I definitely do see. I could definitely see this franchise ending with a couple of even more sacrifices to some of these characters.
Oh, sure. For
But,
the greater good.
Yeah, the greater
For the
good.
greater good.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll see. I like I said, I'm hoping this is
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to transition off of something because I wanted to ask. So I was in a space the other day, and we were just recently talking about cliffhangers, and it was just like, okay. So I wanted to ask your opinion on something, and somebody said, "Oh, that would be so cheesy. This because you knew it'd be coming back." So July 14th, we've got, of course, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning.
No, July 12th actually.
July 12th. No, that's right. They moved it up.
Yeah, I know this because I saw the trailer in front of this, and it said July 12th.
Yeah, I know. Anyways, I was talking with some people, and I said, "Wouldn't it be funny and wouldn't it be cool? You want to talk about cliffhangers because we have the next one coming out next year and whatever else. If
possible, yeah,
the final scene was we see Tom Cruise. Of course, the last scene, in the first trailer is when he jumps off the cliff.
Yeah,
wouldn't it be great if they jumps off the cliff and then it goes to black and people's like."
Yeah.
People, he's like, yeah, exactly. People, he's like, people. So the person is like, oh, that would be so cheesy. I said, why? Yeah. Why would that be too? Well, he's coming back. No, you don't.
Yeah. The thing about
but that would be a literal cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And I said, that would be awesome.
The thing about these cliffhangers, though, in these whenever they split these stories into part 1 and part 2, we haven't even gotten. I don't think we even touched on this with Fast 10. But the one issue I always have is not just with where's your third act in the story, because you have to have some kind of arc of sorts to finish up for your part 1. But my bigger issue I always have is, was this story justified in splitting into 2 parts? Because I think of the only 2 franchises so far that have done the whole let's split it into 2 parts and has been successful that we've seen both parts of were what was it? It was the Avengers and Harry Potter.
Yeah,
those are the only 2 franchises so far where leading up to those big finales, they actually earned their justifications to why they had to be split into 2 parts.
I would agree with that.
Whereas we've had other stories like Hunger Games where the second part doesn't satisfy fans who enjoyed the series up to that point, or even Twilight, where it's just like, we don't like, why did you split this into 2 parts?
Yeah.
So that's something I always have an issue with, even with like the upcoming Dune, and we'll see what happens with Dune and Mission Impossible and Fast, 11 or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
But for now, I have to judge these like part ones on their own, and it's that's why I gave something like Dune the rating I gave it, is because like I would like to go for a higher rating, but I want to see where the story is going, because if you don't pay this off, my rating might decrease for this first part. So that's always something I always have, and I'm probably going to have that same confliction with this upcoming Mission Impossible film. So
yeah, but
we'll
I
see.
think that it's one of those things where, and you're right, it's all a matter of where they end that part 1, because and to your point, like,
and where part 2 ends. Too.
Well, absolutely. Like, one of the bravest things and one of the ballsiest things the Russos ever did and the writers did was end that on the plot point or near the plot point of the point of no return.
Yeah.
And you had the hero win, or you had the villain win, and just goes, okay, we'll see you next time, guys. And it's like, oh shit, you really just ended it like that.
Yeah.
You knew what the ending was going to be. You knew the heroes were going to end in the end.
Yeah, it was.
But
yeah,
the fact that you actually took the time and said, what if we ended it like this? Now, truth be told, when I went back and I did my whole 5-year anniversary of Infinity War, I watched it with the director commentary on. It was fascinating. And they basically said it was a tragedy more than anything else.
Yeah.
And it really was, because you had all of the major characters except the OG, okay? Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, and Hawkeye and Black Widow. They were the only ones left. Everybody else was gone.
Yeah.
And so that gave it more stakes to go into part 2. The Hunger Games, I thought, did it very poorly. And so there was just nothing there as far as stakes. On the other hand, you take something like, I don't know. You're right. It's all going to depend on where Mission Impossible ends it. As I said, I think if you really wanted it, Christopher McQuarrie is a phenomenal filmmaker.
Oh, sure.
I think, and I'll bet you dollar to donuts, he and Tom have talked about this extensively. I would bet you dollar to donuts. And I called it. If this happens, I called it here and on that space. If they go to black after that cliff jump, I'm just going to get up, wash my hands, and smile. Because that's
I thought you were going to say, like, I wash my hands, I'm done with this franchise.
No, I'm done with it. No, I walk out and smile because I called it. This is how you don't know if he's going to make it.
Well, we do find the behind-the-scenes stuff we do.
Yeah, well, of course. But the point is, that he may make it in the first 15 minutes. Yeah. I mean, Mission Impossible is one of those franchises, just like anything else. If you killed the main character, like you were talking about with Brian, if you killed Ethan Hunt off, okay? Because how many times in how many movies have we heard, this is going to be our last mission. Yeah. You're going to die. Yeah. If they killed Ethan Hunt, but it was justified, I don't think people would riot.
Well,
I really don't.
Yeah, well, and the thing, too, is that you have to, like, each of these franchises, like Mission Impossible, Fast and Furious, and even the James Bond movies, they all have their own goals and fans and demands of what they want and what they don't want. When I watch a Fast and Furious film, I'm not judging it like Mission Impossible or The Raid, like in terms of like other action films, or even just like judging it, as you said, like an Oscar caliber film, like I would with something like Everything Everywhere All at Once or Coda. I'm judging Fast and Furious films by how much was I entertained and how much was I laughing my ass off at how ridiculous all the stunts were and all the retcons were. Because like I said, a lot of these retcons, like some of them in Fast and Furious, are very clever, and at times they just get so ridiculous you can't just help but put a smile on your face, like, okay, that was pretty funny.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Even with the way that Dante was introduced in this film with that reveal shot, I thought, oh my god, that was hilarious. Immediately I knew I was in for a ride. So. Yeah,
but no, guys, so that's gonna about wrap it up. I think we've covered everything. I mean, this was look, at the end of the day, I had fun. I mean, I'm not gonna, as I said, keep repeating. I turn my brain off.
That's
Am
not
I gonna go
having
back and
fun.
see it
That's being
again?
stupid. No,
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 I
no.
probably am not going to go see it again, but I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was. And I had a great time. And that's what, it's going to have to, pick up some steam in the coming days and weeks, but it's going to be fine. And it's going to be interesting, too, that, of course, we have the writer's strike going on. It's going to be interesting to see if and when they don't push this next one back.
Yeah.
So you're probably not going to see this till 2026.
Yeah.
I had to guess.
Yeah. I just like, I know Vin Diesel said like, oh, we might make this a trilogy. We'll see. It's like, no.
Well, that's definitely not going to happen.
Just shut up. Don't do a trilogy. Just finish it out and you're done.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think that was more of him just, saying hyperbole and things the fans wanted to hear, because even in the back of his mind, knowing what he is doing all this, I think he's not getting tired of the paycheck. He's getting tired of having to do all this stuff. And I think
it's like, I hate to say this, but it's like the only film like this. Well, now that he's done with Guardians of the Galaxy, he's got nothing else outside of Riddick.
And that's the thing. I mean, you could take a look at Michelle Rodriguez.
Yeah.
I mean, this is no disparaging on her. I want to make that perfectly clear. But other than Fast and the Furious and maybe Girl Fight, what do people know her for?
Dungeons and Dragons,
Widows.
She's actually challenged herself as an actor.
Well, I mean, but my point is, at the end of the day, when you say Michelle Rodriguez, she is most known for Fast and Furious.
Of course, yeah. It's what put her on the map.
Yeah, exactly. So, but so this is just one of the many spoiler casts that we're going to be doing this summer. The next one is going to be the first week of June, of course, for Across the Spider-Verse. No, I'm going to see this.
No, I'm laughing because I just realized I'm like, wow, there actually might be a chance I might be back on for this.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
I mean, you're more than I extend you the invite. You're going to have. I'm going to get to know you really, really well in the month of June.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, though, you're on your own for the Flash because I ain't seeing that shit. You want to talk about a franchise I'm sick and tired of?
Okay.
DC is it. I am done with that. I am done. Like, they have their own issues, but I am done with that franchise.
Yeah, but we have a lot of stuff coming up. We've got Across the Spider-Verse. We've got Transformers: The Rise of the Beast. We have the aforementioned. We've got the aforementioned Flash. We've got Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which right now is coming out of cans is a little.
We'll see.
Some say, or some is saying this is no better than a little bit better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. We'll see about that. Yeah. And then in July, of course, we've got a pretty big July. We've got Mission Impossible, which I think is going to be the biggest movie this summer. Oppenheimer, which I'm absolutely going to go see this in IMAX, and it looks amazing.
Bring headphones. Oh, what was it? Earplugs, because it's going to get loud.
It's going to get loud, but it's going to and the cast is stacked, and I can't wait. And of course, we do have Barbie. And then, beginning of, in August, we've got a couple. Blue Beetle, but the one I'm really looking forward to
Gran Turismo.
That looks very good, believe it or not.
It does not, but
we
could disagree another time on that.
On the one I am really looking forward to is September 1st, and that's The Equalizer 3. That's one of my top 5 most anticipated movies of the year. Not to mention, we have at tail end of the year, we have movies like Doom 2. We've got Killers of the Flower Moon. We've got a ton of stuff coming up for the channel. So, not to mention the perfect movies. We are going to be doing, talking with somebody right now, we're going to be doing The Dark Knight for June's perfect movie. Also, guys, I have not forgotten about the Patreon channel. So, you guys have made your marks. You want me to do The Untouchables for Mob Mondays and for Rewatch Wednesdays, Training Day with Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke, and I will get you back on because at some point we will be doing a Star Wars Born for Rewatch Wednesdays. So, guys, there's a ton of stuff on the channel, and you can, like it says down there on the ticker, you can either like the channel, support the channel, okay, and thank you very much, Dad. Thank you very much, Dad, about that. And we're gonna bring you a ton of stuff too, so don't you worry about that. But yeah, you can either like the videos, support me, via super chat, go to Patreon. You guys are gonna be getting a ton. The store, go pick yourself up a mug. We got Father's Day just around the corner at the end of June. Go get him a great mug, okay? I get so much stuff. You can't even pay this much for the amount of stuff I'm going to be giving you. And Matthew is going to be coming back here making appearances every now and then. We got the show. We got all this stuff. Tell your friends. And I got a little surprise. So that is that I won't see. Investment is probably not the right word. It was $70. So every time you hear a movie trailer, you hear the same voice, one of the same voices. I got the guy that does the movie trailer voice. I got the man that does the voiceovers. He's going to be doing the trailer for the channel. So let's go check that out. So, anyways, guys, so that's going to do it for today. And he'll be back. Matthew will be back in a couple weeks, at least.
I'll be back.
Do you want to come back? Do you want to come back with Spider-Verse?
My schedule might be busy, but I'll let you know. But regardless, I will be back on the show soon.
Okay, and nonetheless, I am always hosting spaces, either hosting spaces or in spaces. You can follow me right there on the bottom left-hand corner. That's Wannabe Rounder. It's all one word. It's very easy and simple. And as I said, I'm always tweeting about movies, or I'm in spaces about movies, or I'm even hosting spaces about movies. So go check that out. Okay, guys, do the 3 things that you need to do. Be safe, be careful, and have a great weekend. He's Matthew. I'm David. This is Real Talk, and we're out. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.